Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the SpotOn Spotlight. I'm Ian Murray, the president of SpotOn Productions. I'm excited about today's guest. He is a leader in the creative space in Cincinnati, and he and his company, Brandience, have worked with a number of big-name brands that you've heard of, like Kroger, Skyline Chili, and Cintas. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Brian McHale with Brandience. Brian, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Yeah, hi, Ian. Good morning, and thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, Brian, tell me a little bit about Brandience and kind of what your role is there. What do you guys do?
Sure, we're a marketing agency that we play in primarily four different categories. We work with restaurant chains, retail chains, franchise businesses, as well as hospital systems. And really, our main focus is trying to help those various brands connect with consumers so we can drive traffic at the end of the day. That's what it's all about. My role as CEO is just to make sure that we keep kind of our focus on making sure that we're delivering for our clients. Because if clients are winning, then we're winning, and so that's really what I want to make sure is we continue to help our clients win, and then we'll be good.
That's awesome. So you've been winning for almost 20 years with Brandience. You guys have seen enormous changes in marketing and technology. When you look back, what's been the biggest key to staying relevant and thriving as a creative business?
Well, I mean, you're right that the change has been, amazing and continuous, right? In both marketing and in tech, and that's going to continue. That in and of itself isn't going to change. But I think the reason that we've been able to do what we've been able to do successfully for so many years is we really try to stay nimble and adapt to all of those changes and the new technology, while not losing sight of who we are. I think it's so important as a business to make sure that you understand who you are, or make sure your employees understand who you want to be as a business, and then focus there, because you can really help your clients that way, I think, if you have a focused approach.
And you mentioned Nimble, and I know that's kind of a leadership philosophy for you. So what does stay nimble actually mean? And how did that idea first take shape in your career?
Yeah, nimble to me, really, into our company, really means staying flexible and not getting bogged down when you don't need to get bogged down. And I will say I'm a big believer in process, and we have a lot of processes in place that help us operate in a very efficient and quality manner. But something I learned very early on in my career, I can still remember the person that taught this to me is, say a process has 8 steps. There are times when you don't have to do all 8, and you can still get to the result that the client needs and that you need. And this person was very good at showing me and teaching me, hey, in this case, you don't need to do number 2 and number 4, and you'll still get to where you need to go. And I think that was really my first exposure to really thinking in a broad sense about being nimble, not giving up quality, but knowing when to be flexible.
I think it's a great point, because it's so easy to get into this like rigidity of a process. Process is great, and it exists for a very good reason. It's so you can, like you said, consistently deliver results for clients. But to not be able to have that flexibility and say, hey, we can kind of shorten this piece of the step, or like you said, we don't need this piece of step, I think is really important for business owners to look at when they're evaluating
and I think
process.
it's also, and to build on what you're saying, I think it's also important to communicate that to the employees at the business, so that they understand that there can be some leeway when necessary, in order to get to the result that everybody needs, and frankly what the client needs.
And we just hired a new producer who has a ton of industry experience, worked for networks, History Channel. And when he came in, we were doing onboarding. It's like, here's our process. And we know it works pretty well because we've been at this for 28 years. But that being said, if you've got a better idea too, like bring that, like let's talk about it. Let's figure out how we can tweak the system that we have. And I think that's that nimble piece. Like if we got something new, let's try it. Let's see how we can maybe tweak something that we think has worked but could be better. So
Right, exactly. And that gets back to even your earlier question just about referencing change in the industry. I mean, what we do is changing every day. It's one of the reasons I love this industry. is advertising, marketing. It is continuously changing, as are our clients' brands. And so it keeps you young, it keeps you interested, and I think it keeps it exciting and not boring.
So I have young kids, as we talked about earlier. Are you guys leaning into this 6-7 trend at all? Have you seen any customers wanting to jump on that
Yeah,
bandwagon?
that that is not my kids are a lot older than yours. That is not something that I am an expert on at this point.
I'm gonna run around the house like every time you accidentally say like this dinner will be ready in 6 or 7 minutes. I'm like 6, 7. Like oh, trends definitely are something that are heavily influence both of our industries, being in that marketing and client creative space.
Right.
So
Right.
this bringing us kind of back to the topic for today. So you have 5 rules to stay nimble, and those have really become a part of Brandience's DNA. Kind of walk me through what those 5 rules are and how they came to be. Where did they come from?
Okay. I think before I go through them, really where they came from is these are things that I think I kind of picked up along the way over my career. I was fortunate to have many good mentors throughout my career, and a lot of these were things that I was able to kind of pick up from different people along the way, and and we really had infused them into the DNA at Brandience well before we ever got around to writing them down. But the 5 that we landed on, like you mentioned, the first one is only measure what's meaningful. The second one is communicate openly but judiciously. A third one is don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Fourth is being able to sprint when necessary, and last is just be ready for what's next. And we feel like if we can kind of live those 5 rules, we're usually very well prepared to deliver what a brand may need at any one particular time, because every brand needs something different and they need it on a different timing and a different way, and so you have to be able to adapt.
Those are fantastic. I love that first one about data too, because in the data age, it's so easy to become overwhelmed with too many data points that
Yeah.
you're like, what's relevant? We need to figure out what tells the story that we're looking for.
That's one of my, I like them all, but that actually is one of my favorites because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine that um, just because you can measure doesn't mean that you should. And I'm a big data guy. I love data. I mean, I my background in the ad industry really started on the media side, and the media geek in me loves to look at data. Data is a big piece of what we do at Brandians. But I'll tell you, when we sit down to work with clients and say, hey, we're thinking about this campaign or this effort, and we start to talk about what success looks like, that's when we really start to get into those KPIs and try to really hone in on what's most important to measure.
Mm-hmm.
And we do try to help clients think through if they want to measure something that isn't really going to add any benefit to what we're all trying to accomplish for the business, then we do try to encourage them to not measure that. And something that's kind of similar in a way when I think about that rule. When we do strategic planning, one of my big things is, yes, during strategic planning with clients, you have to think about what you want to be or who you are, but it's also equally important to think about what you don't want to be or who you aren't.
Yeah.
And I kind of liken that over to the measurement as well. It's important to think about what you want to measure, but it's equally important to spend time saying, what don't we want to measure? What's not going to get us anywhere close, or help us get to whatever the big objective is at the end of the day.
And that's the marketing funnel, and all the stages of the marketing funnel have so many
Mm-hmm.
different data points in each one of those that it can become very overwhelming very quickly.
Yeah, you could lose focus. I mean, I see it. You lose focus. You kind of analysis by paralysis by analysis. I mean, it can really slow you down, frankly.
Do you have a process to figure out like what's truly meaningful to track when it comes to meeting with clients or looking at a project?
I would say we don't have a strict process around that because it does vary so much by brand and as well as as well as the type of project. If we're helping a brand refresh its packaging as one example, the measurements are going to be so different there than if we're doing a digital media strategy and buy. And so there isn't a strict process, but it really just comes down to helping the client articulate what it is that we want to accomplish, and then what do you know, or what can you measure along the way that might help us get there. And so it's good old fashioned communication, you know.
Which is another one of your rules: communicate openly but judiciously.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That one I think came up maybe a little bit out of my impatience, just as a person. I love when people communicate openly, but I also love when it's judicious, because we're all, as a business owner, as a marketer, you're getting inundated with messages, communications. You're getting emails, you're getting chats, you're getting text. I think it's so important for us as an agency, when we communicate with clients, to do it openly, but also to recognize that the amount of their day that they are actually spending on what we do is pretty small. It's everything that we do, but it's a small percentage of what they do on a daily basis. So we've got to really pick and choose what they need to know, when they need to know it. Otherwise, we're just going to overwhelm them. And so that's really where that one came from, is try to communicate as best you can, but don't overwhelm.
Along that vein, what have you learned about effective communication as a leader?
Well, maybe you ought to ask my company. We'll see if the people agree. I think for me, the biggest thing is, no matter what you're communicating, make sure you communicate the why. Why should they care about what's it mean to them? And we also try to translate that to when we're communicating with clients as well, but to me, I've found that when you're speaking, with everybody within an organization, or as a leader with a group, if you can connect the dots for them as to why they should care what you're saying, or why they should care what direction we're going, or what the vision is, what it means to them as individuals, it'll go a lot further than typically what you're going to get if you just kind of say, here it is. Mm-hmm. But if somebody doesn't know what it means to them, it'll go basically in one ear and out the other.
I think that's a really important point. People, just in all phases of working with other people, understanding the why is hugely important to get them kind of in that same, like, we're all going in the same direction. Why should I care about this the way you do? The other part we talk about internally is clear is kind. I mean, we're in the communications business, and sometimes we're the worst people at communicating. Yes. So we really pull it back to that accountability and communication too, is like, who will do what by when. So we close that loop, repeat kind of, I understood that you said this, so we know we're all moving forward kind of in the same direction together.
Yeah, I think accountability is at least helping people understand how you want them to be held accountable when you're communicating is key. And, a lot of times I think as leaders, you might think, well, people might not want to be held accountable, or they don't want to be told what to do. I do feel like, as long as you give people parameters, and give them the ability to be able to operate freely within those parameters, I think people welcome accountability, because then they know what's expected, and they know what they have to do to succeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So moving on to this next point, then, you and I are in the creative space, and I think this is so easy for us to happen. It's don't let perfect be the enemy of good. A lot of times as creatives, our teams, we got to go to the mountaintop, and we got to get this crystal clarity, and it takes time, and we have to make sure we have this perfect thing that we then execute on perfectly. But sometimes it's this is pretty darn good. It maybe it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good, and it can be really easy to say, but can be really hard to live out. How do you create a culture where people feel comfortable moving fast and allowing them to learn as they go?
Yeah, well, I will start by saying, as a recovering perfectionist, because I always like to emphasize with this rule that I'm not advocating bad work. I mean, it has to be good work. We have to be proud of what we do. It has to be at the level that a client expects. But I think it really gets back to the 80-20. rule, and embracing that 80/20, that if you can get 80% of the way there, and you feel like you have very good, um, you have something that's very good and meets the objectives, then you have to step back and say, okay, I could put 20% more effort into this. I could grind the heck out of this. And what's it going to do to my timeline? And what is the real impact that it's going to have? And a lot of times it's going to have a very small impact, if any. And it's going to slow you down and make it harder to do what you need to do in a timely manner for clients. So back to part of your question, what we do, I hope, is we try to um, help people be comfortable with making a mistake. Because
Hmm.
when you're in that perfect versus good, sometimes you may not hit it if you stop too soon, if you stop grinding too soon. I mean, and there's a balance that you have to find. But let people experiment. Let them feel good about making a mistake here or there. You don't have to be that super perfectionist. And so, and sometimes a client's going to demand perfection. And this rule can come into play in different ways depending on the brand you're working with, and the personality of that brand. But I think as long as we have a culture of experimentation and growth, helping people learn how to do what they do better, I think this is a rule that can live really well and deliver really well with the business and with brands, and can deliver a great result.
I like that too. It gives people the opportunity to have some of those more open horizons to figure out, hey, maybe there's
Hmm.
something we didn't think about that could be even better than the direction we were heading in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like just what you were saying with your onboarding a new person, and you're telling them, hey, help us be better. And it's a cliche, but a good idea can come from anywhere, and we really try to live by that.
So in 20 years, you've had to be nimble across so many different fronts. Economies of, 2008 and COVID and technology changes and this new data revolution. Now we're moving into, heavy social and AI is coming down the pipe hard and fast.
Mhm.
How have you guided Brandience through those waves of change while keeping that team motivated, grounded, and nimble?
Um, I don't know that I have like a single answer on that, other than to say I think it's more philosophical. I think it's making sure people are comfortable with change, and making sure people understand that change is coming, whether you want it to or not. It is coming, and the best way, in my opinion, to deal with that is to encourage curiosity, so that people are understanding trends. They're understanding what's coming down the pike, so that they can be prepared for it. It gets back a little bit to what we were just saying about empowering people to experiment with new tools, new strategies, and I would say, lastly, it's as much about continuing to stay focused on who we are as a business, so that people understand where we want to play. I mean, there are a lot of ad agencies that essentially can say they do anything, right? I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
if if a client calls, they'll say yes, and then they'll hang up and they'll say, how are we going to do that? We've never done that. So, but what we try to do is stay focused on what we're best at, and then that way, I think that really helps people understand, all right, what's the North Star? And then as change is impacting them, it helps to limit the amount of chaos that might be happening in their world because of change, because we're not just jumping at any opportunity.
I think part of that too is this continuous cycle of learning. Like you said, we've
Mhm.
we've got to figure out something new hits. AI hits the table a year ago, a little over a year ago. What
Right.
are the things we
Right.
can do with it? How can we use it to better use some of that data? How
Yep.
can we use it to impact what we're doing in social?
I think, you mentioned AI, and one of the things that we did to help our people kind of adapt to AI, and it coming on board. Well, I should probably start by saying I'm a big proponent of AI. We do a lot in that space, but I'll tell you, back when OpenAI, kind of unveiled ChatGPT to all of us, I was equal parts terrified as I was ecstatic about it. And so we really spent a great deal of time helping our people understand the changes that we felt like would be coming, We set those parameters so people understood how they could operate with AI within those parameters to keep us and our clients' businesses safe, secure. But then one of the things that we did was we gave everybody a bonus goal around related to AI. And so for a year, everybody within the organization um, had to push a project forward that was AI related, just so they could roll up their sleeves and get to understand the technology, understand what it was good at, understand what it's really bad at, and I think that helped everybody understand that this is a big change, but I can be a part of this change in a very kind of human centered way. And this technology isn't coming for me and my job; it's going to actually make me a better person at what I'm doing here for Brandience. And so that's, kind of one, back to your original question, one example of how we've tried to integrate a new technology or change into the organization.
I think that's a great point too. Like figuring out ways, especially in this, it's the creative space. You look at generative AI, you're like, oh, we're all going to be replaced. But I think the better way to look at AI is like that partner. It's a creative partner
Mm-hmm.
to help you
Yep.
brainstorm and get 80% of the way there. It's not going to be perfect,
Right.
and especially in the creative space, it's still people led. You still have to have
Mm-hmm.
people come up with the big idea,
Yeah.
and then lead your team and the client through that as well. So.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I agree. 100%.
How do you balance long term brand vision with the need to make quick decisions in a fast changing market?
Oh, I don't know if I would say, I don't know if I'd say it's a balance. I guess it's a balance. The way I think about it is you have to have that long-term vision in place. You have to have that roadmap. Otherwise, the quick decisions aren't so quick or aren't so easy. But if you've got that long-term vision in place, when something comes up that you have to think about very quickly, if you're grounded in where the company wants to go, if you're grounded in the long-term vision for the brand that you're working on, then I think it makes those quick decisions easier because you know, okay, I get how this fits in. I get whether this is going to derail us from where we're trying to go. So for me, it's I don't know if I would use the word balance. I would say you have to commit to that long term, and then it makes excuse me the quick decisions all that much easier.
Okay, that's good insight. When we look at leaders in business, often I think there's a struggle between how we handle creativity because a lot of times creativity in more, let's say, professional services business or those have a hard time bringing creativity into that space as a leader. How do you find leaders can balance that creativity with realities of business? And is it maybe an anecdote of a story you've had working with a client or something like that? How do you do smart risk taking without losing that focus on business goals?
Yeah, I think bringing that creativity in. I think it goes back to, I think, something we've kind of already said, and that is setting setting those parameters for experimentation. So helping people understand how much elbow room do I have to play, and how creative can I get, and I think if you set those parameters for folks, um, it really makes them even more creative. I think sometimes I think people think, well, take the chains off and I can do anything. I'll be able to do what I need to do. But I think having those parameters and giving people the ability to play within whatever box that is, however big that is, actually ends up making them more creative because they know how far they can push it. But again, also back to um, allowing people to make mistakes if they are going to experiment or be creative. We're I wish we were perfect as a business, and we're certainly not. And I think hopefully we've gotten better with each year that's gone by. But as a business, we're not perfect, so you can't expect your people to be perfect in the way that they're trying to take things to another level.
Yeah, and I like that. We back to that risk taking part and letting people kind of have an opportunity or some of that space to maybe not get it right all the time.
Yeah.
And in our business, it's been hard because we're small and we're like, we're not sure where we can take those risks and letting
Mm-hmm.
people kind of work outside the bounds. But that we found some of those times when we do that, we get really good ideas about how we can do things differently, or my perspective is one way, and that's I've been trained to do it a certain way based on my experience, but letting other
Yeah.
people, even in finance or in operations, figure out new ways to bring some creative ideas into it, I think is huge when you're looking to grow business and stay nimble.
I think too, as an agency, one of the greatest advantages we have in as far as our business model is we work with so many different types of businesses and so many different types of models that I find I learn a lot from just digging into our clients' business and understanding how do they make money, how what are the um, opportunities and challenges that they face on a regular basis, even if it's not 100% applicable to the business. I learned so much from our clients just understanding their business models. So, selfishly, I'm typically trying to really dig into their business model so that we can do a better job for them. But also, I have an ulterior motive to say, I bet I can learn something out of this to run my business even better.
That's very cool. That's what I love
Yeah.
about, like you said, being in this creative space. We're with people across all different kinds of industries. I love
Mhm.
learning about that's one of the most fascinating things about being in business, is learning about how other people are doing business and the cool creative things that they do every day.
Right. Well, how many times have you been in a conversation with a client and they'll say they do something? It could be anything, and you'll sit back and go, "We used to do that. I wonder why we don't do that anymore." I mean, it's just in the press of business, change, everything. So I think the more you can expose yourself to different opinions like that, you're not going to agree with everything, but you're
Right.
you're going to come up with a good idea.
Absolutely. So I wanted to share a comment that came in. Matt said he loves the idea of the bonus goal to drive adoption and obtain key learnings. I think that was a great point you made about how we can stretch people a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, good.
So we've talked about nimble a lot and staying nimble, or not opportunities where you're not nimble. Do you have an example where maybe being nimble has made a major difference, or if you weren't, where it caused an issue for your team or a client, like a real world learning?
Yeah. I have an example. It's a recent example, and I would say we were nimble, but we also weren't nimble. So we had both things going for us. It was for a restaurant chain, and we were doing a redesign project for them, and around a menu, and there were a variety of business reasons that were causing a lot of changes to come our way as we were in the middle of kind of redesigning this menu. And so, we were set up and had put a decent amount of resources against this project, knowing that it was going to be somewhat of an elastic decision making process. So we were somewhat prepared for that. However, I would say that we didn't quite get it right. And as we got closer and closer to the final due date. And so, no, had we known, and probably had we done a better job of communicating upfront with the client, we would have had a better sense of some of the last minute things that were going to happen. And so we would have added some additional resources, recognized that we were going to have to, as we say in one of our rules, sprint a little longer than what we thought we were going to have to do. So we were able to get it to a place that we were very prepared for, but then didn't quite have it. So at the end of the day, everything worked out and it was good. But we know for the next time that we need to make sure that we've got our running shoes on for a little bit longer than what we had originally anticipated. Because as I always say to our company about this rule, um, even the world class sprinter can't sprint all the time.
Right.
There's only, so you have to be able to do it, but it is also equal parts marathon at times too.
Especially in the creative space, you have to be so flexible and be nimble because, we're in this space of iterations and versions and revisions, and it's always you get towards the end and you're like two versions out from final delivery, and the client throws something
Right.
at you. You're like, oh, all
Yeah.
right, we're gonna figure out how to adapt and
Yeah.
integrate this
Yeah.
new change. So,
And 9 out of 10 times, those things that are coming over the wall last minute, it's not because the client wants the change. It's because something has materially changed in their business that is
right.
that is causing the change. So that's again gets back to just the whole idea of being nimble, because as good as you think you are and as good as your client tries to be, um, it's tough. It's tough to get it, to get a 10 out of 10 all the time as far as prep.
Yeah. So as we're kind of winding down, for people who are listening today, what's one practical step that they can make this week to help make their organization just a little bit more nimble? You've got 5 great rules. Is there one that like stands out, or just like one kind of bow on that whole principle?
I would say if you're looking at your organization, you're like, okay, how can I be more nimble? I think the easiest way would just be pick a pain point, some process that you do not, that's not working for you, or that's causing major concern within the organization. Tackle that process, figure out what that bottleneck is, and get rid of it, because that will give you the sense of, okay, this is how I can be more nimble with this process. This is how, so I think it really is. I mean, that's what I would recommend, is pick one and start there, because if your culture isn't nimble, you're not going to change it overnight, because people aren't going to understand how they need to operate and what they need to do. But if you can begin to show small wins, I think people then can begin to buy into having a culture that is flexible and open to change.
That's great advice. This brings me to my last question for you. And this, I love learning from other people. We talked about, learning from other businesses. What is the best piece of business advice that you've ever received?
I would say it goes back to one of the rules. I mentioned it. I mentioned it earlier, as far as a recovering perfectionist. Very early on in my career, I was a perfectionist. I mean, if I did not follow the 80-20 rule, I did not. And frankly, I was so young in my career that I just kind of thought that's what you did. And I had a very good mentor pull me aside one time and explain why that was good, but also what I was giving up by not being a bit more flexible, a bit more nimble, and starting to sort of, move towards that 80-20. And it really helped me from a career standpoint. It helped me learn faster. It helped me be more creative. And frankly, I think it just helped me be better overall at what my job was at the time, and carried that forward.
I love that. People who invest in you and have these little nuggets of wisdom that can help really change the trajectory of your career and where you're headed as an individual. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Brian, where can people find you online? Where can they connect with you?
Oh, sure. LinkedIn. So Brian McHale on LinkedIn. And then they can certainly always try to contact us through our contact page at brandience.com as well. You might see my face. We just started a new podcast ourselves on YouTube. It's called Go Beyond. So you can check me out there on the Brandience page too. So those are probably the 3 best places.
Excellent. Brian, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed our conversation about staying nimble and being open to new avenues and new ways to do things. So thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ian. It was fun. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So if you've enjoyed today's episode of the SpotOn Spotlight, hit that follow button on Spotify so you don't miss the next inspiring conversation. And if something in today's episode resonated with you, share it with a friend or colleague who get value from it, because great ideas are better when they're shared. Thank you so much for joining us on the SpotOn Spotlight, where we shine a light on what makes business better, one story at a time. We'll see you on the next one.